What about marketing without budget? Do you think it's possible to build a brand, strong brand, and when you don't have that much budget?
Yeah, you see that. You see it happen. It usually happens because the product is so uniquely good, right? It's widely adopted without you having to tell people about it. Great. That's awesome. Like, it's not like you haven't done marketing. It's just that your product is really carrying the load for you in terms of like getting people to talk about it. But what a lot of times you'll see is brands start off that way and they can get to a certain size, but then they have to start advertising. They have to start telling people like, why should you buy me?
I think storytelling now more have power than before, because like people want something more unique, and people try to do like some story about brand.
Sometimes if you've got a great product, maybe you don't need a story.
I'm excited today to be in Kellogg, back to my alma mater, to Global Hub, to take interview with one of my favorite professor, Kevin McTigue. I was so long time doubt about if I did right choice to be in Kellogg.
Okay.
Like, do I need better to build my business and not spend time here? But after your case with Stella, I figured out like, okay, I'm in the right place. It was awesome. And everyone who asks me about Kellogg, I always like give example about interaction with students and how you do this. Thank you so much that you host us today. And let's talk about marketing.
Great, let's talk about it.
Let's start with how you find this technique to be so involved in conversation in a class.
I think I didn't grow up teaching, right? I grew up in the business world, and so if I was doing a presentation, it was to a client, perhaps, you know what I mean? Or to my team. And so just naturally, you're trying to engage more in those situations. You can't just talk at a client and hope they respond. And so it's got to be some give and take. And so it's probably just how I grew up. Do you know what I mean? That's just what I was most used to. I also just find it much more interesting to have a conversation in the class. Do you know what I mean? Versus just hearing myself talk for 90 minutes. It's way more fun just to hear, to have a conversation with people and to get people engaged.
Engage, yeah. You said like about your business experience. You took some part from business and you brought it to interaction with student. What about cases? Are you take cases when you decided this brand interesting for yourself, or why exactly, like Stella or another case?
So when I choose cases, sometimes, like a long time ago when I started teaching the course, there were some cases in there, and some I just loved and I've kept because I love what I love the story that they tell. Do you know what I mean? Like for every class, there's probably some like point that I'm trying to make. You know what I mean? Like I want you to leave with like these 5 things, and some cases are just really good at helping you understand those 5 things. And if I'm like, there's a case that doesn't quite do that, then I'm either looking for a new case, or sometimes I've had to write cases. Do you know what I mean? Just because I need the case to like help students learn something specific. So
you teach and you bring the same way like experience for customer behavior or something. Like you let us to love the brand as well after that, because I saw people buy flowers for one of the case. Some people like send like Stella, and people get engaged with the brand based on your classes. Like I never drink Stella. I'm from Europe.
Right.
I love European beer, but after that I start drinking Stella. I don't know, because it's probably that experience stay in your brain.
Sure.
And with good emotions and this like kind of stuff.
I think that I found this in my career too, though, is that anytime I've worked and spent time on a brand, even if I didn't think I was going to like it, the more you know about it, you start to grow an affection for it, I think, right? So even, Renova toilet paper, right? You still have an affection for it, even if you're not going and buying it.
Are you an easy customer because you know how marketing works, right? Or you always like say, oh, I know this brand, like I know how they did this. I don't want to buy this, for example, because I know how they make me feel to buy it.
No, I think I know what they're doing and I appreciate it, and then I'll buy it anyway. Yeah. Like I know what they're doing, and I think it's, like liquid death water, for instance. I know it's $8 water, but it's like, you know what? Sometimes I'm like, I feel like having an $8 water, and I know exactly what's going on. I know what they're doing, and I think they do a good job, and so it's fine.
Yeah, we had a case also in Hong Kong, one of the class, and they give us a case about diamonds.
Yeah.
And people like said, oh my God, why I like buy so expensive ring for my wife for engagement. It's also a culture how the brand builds a culture.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I mean, that De Beers case that you probably did is, I think I did that case in Kellogg. It's fascinating. Like they made up how much you should spend on diamonds. Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind. And I think it's interesting how different that culture is like in Asia, right? Where it's not as much that. It's more about like buying for yourself. And I think it's fascinating.
They buy not just for wives, they also engaging for husbands.
Isn't that
Even
great?
in some country, like it's okay. Everyone talk about AI. Everyone talk how everything change. Do you think marketing already get some changes, or we in the way when one day it will be different? AI have that much effect marketing.
I think marketing's been changing for the last 20 years. And I think that we're on a path where it's changing pretty rapidly. But I think it would be crazy to say that it didn't change pretty rapidly 10 years ago. Like when YouTube came out and the social media came out, that really changed the landscape of marketing. And now what we've got, machine learning is changing a lot of things. And that's probably 5, 6 years old now, but we're starting to incorporate that. And then Gen AI is going to change a lot of the things we do. But I think it does kind of, I don't think it goes off a cliff. I think it just kind of goes in kind of a progression. Do you know what I mean? Like, so I don't think it's, the other thing, very practically, even if we had the capabilities to radically change, it's still human beings and they're not that quick.
It's impossible to do marketing like when we don't have agency, like marketing agency, and we just use AI, for example, for brand, for strategy, marketing strategy, or for something like that. It will be always people involved.
I think so. I mean, even I was just showing an ad today. It's the Volvo ad from Saudi Arabia from like 4 weeks ago. They did it completely with Gen AI, and the visuals are fine. They're great. You know, nobody's got 7 fingers or anything like that. But there's no idea. The ad does not have an idea. And so I think that even if you don't need a cameraman anymore, you still need a person that has great ideas, that can take an idea about your product and make that resonant with your customers. And so we're always going to need someone to think. We're always going to need someone that has ideas, that has creativity. Because I think one of the worries is that if everyone's got access to these tools, we're just all going to make the same stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And then so you're still going to need someone that's smarter or better at using the tools or everything, you know, just to break out of the clutter.
Yes, that AI like a tool, and everyone still use the same tool. Does it mean everyone will look the same? And to do, or does that mean competition in marketing more difficult or more easy now?
I think it's just kind of, and the way I think about it is almost like when we moved to, and everyone got Photoshop.
Yeah.
Like Photoshop was incredible software that made everyone's life a lot easier and faster. Now, everyone's got Photoshop. And then you just move on to like, okay, now we all have that tool. Now, how do we win? Right? So once we, like, there's some people now that are experimenting that can be like, maybe get an advantage by using the tools better. But eventually everyone's going to have the tools. And so then who uses them better? Who has better ideas? I think it's always going to come down to that.
Storytelling, I think storytelling now more have power than before. Because like people want something more unique.
Yeah.
And people try to do like some story about brand. Is this true or it's not that?
I think there's been stories in brands forever. I do think that in the right circumstances, stories can be really powerful about brands. I think sometimes if you've got a great product, maybe you don't need a story. I think that sometimes you can just say like, this is the best phone because it's the fastest. And there's not a story there, but it's a really meaningful benefit to people and they really choose.
It's not like commodity after that.
Yeah, that's where it gets in trouble. Once there's a bunch of phones that are the same speed and everything's the same, now you need a story. Now you need some other reason for me to choose you.
What about marketing without budget? Do you think it's possible to build a brand, strong brand, and when you don't have that much budget?
Yeah, you see that. You see it happen. It usually happens because the product is so uniquely good, right? If your product is so uniquely good that it gets widely adopted without you having to tell people about it, great. That's awesome. Like, it's not like you haven't done marketing. It's just that your product is really carrying the load for you in terms of like getting people to talk about it. But what a lot of times you'll see is brands start off that way and they can get to a certain size, but then they have to start advertising. They have to start telling people like, why should you buy me, right? So like Amazon famously said they were never going to advertise. Now they advertise more than anybody. Tesla was like, no, we don't need it. It's stupid. They're going to have to advertise,
You have to.
right?
What, from your experience, the biggest marketing mistakes you saw in your career?
In my career, oh my gosh.
Maybe some brand like did something and was destroying by that.
Oh, well, I mean, the mistake, I made a huge mistake one time. I used to sell a product, this lunch meat, and it has a red lid. And I redid the packaging so it didn't have a red lid anymore. And I tested it to death. And every test said it was going to be great. And then when I launched it, no one recognized it. No one bought it. Sales went down so much that I had to create talking points for the board of directors to say at the quarterly sale, like investor call. It was a disaster. And what I didn't think about was that in a test, if I say, is this better than this? You're looking at it and you're paying attention. But when you're buying something in a store that is not that important, you don't look hard. You don't think hard. You just grab what you know. And so my test was not a good judge of reality. And so I should have done more in-store testing with that. But that was one of my biggest mistakes I've ever made. I think a lot of times there's a lot of debate about that Jaguar ad as being one of the colossal mistakes of advertising, the one from fall. I'm hesitant to like completely blast them. We'll see what happens. It did seem from a traditional view that like when you have a brand, there's almost always something good in there, right? There's something in there that's good that you can take up, and clean up, polish, and bring back out to people in a new way. And what they did was basically throw everything that they had away, and they created something completely different and weird. And I think if you're going to do that, why would you use that brand? Why would you use the Jaguar brand? Make a new brand, right? If you're going to throw everything away, why are you keeping the name? Like, try that weird brand with something with a new name on it. But like the Jaguar brand did have some value still in it that I think they just completely discarded. So I'm interested to see how that works.
What about influencers, like social media, like you said, it's big stuff now and many brands try to use this. And one of the case like Stanley Cup, I think,
Yeah.
right? And they use social media.
Yeah.
Is this like a trend still possible to do that, or will be less, like something new, we use it and after that we'll go back to more traditional stuff?
Well, I don't know. I feel like influencers have always existed in a way. Like even within your circle of friends, there's somebody that influenced you about different categories, right? Now what we've done is we've taken those people and given them a platform with social media. Some people are better at it and they influence more people. At the highest level, there's always been celebrities. And those celebrities have been like, I like this, I choose to smoke Marlboros. And so I think influencers are just kind of an evolution of that. I still think we're going to have influencers for a while. I think what's interesting is that I think brands are trying to figure out right now is they're getting more value out of the smaller influencers, but you need so many more of those to get to the scale of a big one. And so it's way easier just to pay a big influencer and be like, say nice things about me, right? But sometimes that doesn't have the same power as a bunch of small ones that you put together. And so I think maybe the next generation of influencers is we can find them now, but how do I find them and kind of manage them in such a way that I can achieve consistency and then still get scale? Because I think that might be what we're looking for right now.
What you can maybe recommend something for people who wants to create a personal brand?
Yeah.
Maybe some like key points. I remember from your class as well when you said like you need to know your customer. Age, married, kids.
Yeah.
I think we talk about donuts, Dunkin' Donuts,
did,
okay,
yes.
and it's something like you need to know exactly.
I think so. I think with personal brand, though, you have to realize that in your life you have lots of different audiences, right? So your personal brand at work is designed to create the most value for that audience at work, and your personal brand at home. And it's not like your brand changes, but you're showing a different face of the brand in the different situations that you're in. If you were trying to create like a brand online, right? You want to be known for something. I think you probably start with your equities because you're not a product that can easily change. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost like so sometimes when we're talking about like innovation, It's like, well, figure out what the customer need is, then you can design something to fit that. Well, you're kind of baked already. And so it may be that you go the inverse. It's like, this is who I am and what I'm good at and what I know. Now let me figure out what target that connects to, right? Because you're not going to completely like change your product because you are who you are. But I still think it makes sense to, if you want to have a personal brand, like know what that is in your head. Like, this is what I'm trying to achieve. Know who that you think is going to be most responsive to this, and then take actions that are consistent with that brand, right? And then as long as you do things that are consistent, that will continue to fill the cup for you, right? And things that you do that are off-brand will detract from the cup. And so I think that that's just good advice for people as you go through your career. It's like, you want to be known as like a good, smart, nice, hardworking person, right? So like, let's continually make decisions that reinforce that perception among our audiences.
One game-changing marketing tip for you, from your perspective, what do you think?
You know, so
It's impossible to do one, probably.
No. But if there was one thing that I stress, I think the most that I see, like if I was to go into any company tomorrow and say, I can guess what your biggest problem is, it's probably focus.
Focus.
Yeah, and I've found this on brands even that I've worked on and that I've taken over. It's that we're trying to do too many things, and we do not have the resources to accomplish all those things at any scale that will have a meaning. And so instead of doing 20 things, if I can do 4 or 6, but I can do those 4 or 6 really well, that's going to have much better impact. But I find this, it's interesting, I find this across industries. I was talking to nonprofits the other day, and they have the same issue. Like nonprofits, they have nobody, they have very little resources, and they're spread so thin that they're really having a hard time moving any like forward a little bit because they're so spread thin. They're calling on every possible donor. They're saying everything is good about us. It's like, man, anything you can do to move towards more focus and less just like dizzying, trying to do everything at once is going to be helpful.
What about this new kind of like traditional brands like Nike, right?
Yeah.
Like, popularity so much, and new brands like Gymshark, for example.
Yeah.
They use just only social media, and these brands like so popular. It's this trend, like Nike, it's will be difficult to recover, or they still can create something will be engaged for customers. Some experience or something.
It's a good question. Like, I don't know if they can go back to. I think the problem is, it goes back to, do you remember like class 1? We were talking about like perfect pair of shoes and like the brand in the middle. I think that back in the day, Nike was like the running shoe. And then they maintained their dominance when there was like a competitive set of 5 because they were known as being kind of like the bad boys or having kind of an edge to them or having something that was, Michael Jordan and having this like extra thing. There's been so many brands that have entered the space that have found all those little segments around Nike and kind of own them, that I think that Nike has a choice. They can either try to be like the shoe brand for everybody again, which is not going to work. Like, it's too much of a crowded space. So they could figure out like, you know what? We're going to be awesome for these people. And that it's going to mean like less volume, right? But that's really hard for some of these big companies to realize. It's like the world changed around you and you're not going to get back to the sales you had in 1985, right? And so what does that mean? How do we move forward successfully? And I think it's about identifying what can still make us special and then pushing forward on that. I still think Nike can be an awesome mainstream shoe brand that sells across every category and stands for something, but they got to figure it out. Because they've really been silent for 5 years. They've come back in the last 6 months with some new things with a new CEO, but they got to figure out what they are. Same with Starbucks, right? Like, there's a million coffee shops, right? Thanks for introducing us to premium coffee, Starbucks. Now there's a million choices I've got, from the lowest to the highest, and you're kind of in the middle. Middle's dangerous, right? But I do think that they can figure out what makes them special, own that, do that better than anybody else, and that's still going to be a good business for them.
I think COVID affects them so much because they probably tried to take easy way because they remove the tables, all this stuff. But on the beginning, it's third place when people come to enjoy, not just to take coffee and leave. They want to sit and talk and other stuff. After COVID, I came once and they still don't have tables.
Really?
What's the point of this Starbucks by Rush Hospital? Maybe they put already back, but it was few, only 1 or 2 tables and that's it. I think they just figure out they can make money on.
I think they figured out how they make money, but a lot of times we run into this problem a lot where there's a short-term idea that we can totally take advantage of, and it's going to drive sales in the short term. But what is that doing to our equity long term? And how does that affect us? I feel like the new CEO, it feels like he says the kinds of things that make me think that they're doing the right things, right? He talks a lot about focus. He talks about like what made us special to begin with. Let's go back and do that. And so those are the kinds of things that you'd want to hear.
You decided you want to be a professor. Can you give some tips? Maybe people watch us who wants or dream like one day. Actually, my both parents teachers, and they said maybe one day you'll be a teacher.
Yeah.
Because I own business. I don't have time. I said one day when I get retired, who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah? Really?
No, I thought it'd be a fun thing to do when I retired. And so I was thinking like, okay, like maybe 62, I'll go back and be a teacher. But when I was 40, maybe 38,
It's my age now. Okay.
I was, gosh, yeah, it was a long time ago. I was probably 38, and I was thinking about it because I'd done some kind of teaching at work. Like we would come up with a new way to do marketing, and then I would roadshow that, or I would roadshow lots of stuff. And I just enjoyed it. And so I reached out to a professor here, and I said, "Hey, how did you get involved in something like this?" And then he told me, "I get that question every week. And it's a question we get every week. Somebody's like, I want to give back. I want to do that." And you're like, okay, well, his advice to me was go teach anywhere. Start with being a guest lecturer. That's pretty easy, right? Be a guest lecturer. You can do that. And then any place that will have you, try teaching there. So I started at DeVry's Graduate School. It's called Keller. I'm not even sure if it's still around. It does not make the top 10 list of the rankings. But I just tried it. I just started. And then you figure out pretty quickly, like, oh, it's not all just the fun of being in front of the class. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. I did that for 2 years, and I liked it, and I was pretty good at it. And so then I got like a random chance here to do it for the part-time evening weekend folks, and it went great. And so then I kept doing that at night, like 1 quarter a year, while I worked for the next 6 years. And then eventually they came to me and said, "Would you like to come full-time?" And I said, "Well, I can't. I have a job." And they laughed, and now I'm here.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Such an interesting story. Question about maybe you have some favorite brand which you think they do an amazing job. How they like maybe from zero they did such a great move. Like you said about this water.
Yeah, that was $2 billion. Like, this could be a fad. Like, I don't know. I'm not sure it was worth $2 billion. Coke's launching their own version. I'm not sure it's going to cost them $2 billion to get it up to that size. We'll see. We'll see. I wish them well. A lot of folks at Pepsi, alums at Pepsi, so I hope that goes great. I think the brand that I like the most, I just wrote a case on Airbnb a couple years ago, and I absolutely adore their recent campaign. It is like so unique in the space, just in the execution style with the animation, and then the benefit messaging could not be more clear. Like you can look at those ads and figure out, like, I know exactly what that creative brief was. You know what I mean? Like it is so clear. And so I'm just a big fan of just the clarity of their work right now. I think it's some of the best I see out there.
Like we talk about this beverages drink, and also I forgot the brand name. They do olive oil.
Okay.
You know the
No.
brand, like green bottle, very unique.
Okay.
I forgot that bottle. And they also start with social media. People just start like randomly cook and use this bottle. But bottle look totally different than any other oil. And they use from Spain, and they like now everywhere again in social media, similar to Stanley. Everyone like buy, and because I'm in logistics business, I'm doing loads for them
Okay,
now.
yeah,
And then I see they more and more products we ship to Colorado from. They use warehouse in Chicago.
I think what's interesting, a lot of times these brands like pop and they get really big, and the brand doesn't know why. Okay? And this happened with like White Claw. I think kind of happened with Stanley. I don't think Stanley did anything on purpose.
You think it was they didn't plan that?
No.
Wow.
I think, I mean, I may be wrong, maybe there's some genius behind it, but I think sometimes things just catch hold in the culture and they kind of take off. I worked in a brand like that one time. Orbit Gum was one of my brands early on, and we launched it with fairly low expectations of like a competitive play. Once it got into the market, it kind of took off on its own. And we had some weird ads that helped it, but those were one of the worst testing ads in Wrigley's history. When we tested the storyboard of it, and then it launched, and it was like this gangbuster success. When that happens, sometimes the people that run the brand are like, I'm a genius. The problem is that like, maybe you got lucky. And so what you got to do now is figure out like why people love you. If you are that successful and you're like, wow, that was just great, it's really time to figure out like what was it that people loved about you, because you have a great chance of screwing that up if you don't know what happened, right? It's great to get lucky, but then like you have to be able to repeat that. And if you can't repeat it, if this is just a fad, that's not going to last very long, right? So figure out what it is about you that people love, and then do more of that.
How this book can be useful for people who maybe not work in marketing, but they wanna start, or they have a own business, and they try make a brand.
This book, I make so little off this book, it doesn't matter if you buy it. And I make nothing off this one. So this is the advertising book. And so I don't think you need this unless you do advertising. But I think this is like, look at it, it's not very big. It's got illustrations. It is like the best of Professor Rucker and I's thinking on where people screw up most when they're making ads. And it's super practical. It's not a textbook. More broadly, Professor Chernev put this out. I don't know if you got this one. Chernev put this out. It's Kellogg on Marketing. It's like the third edition of it. He basically went around the office and had the people that know the most about a given topic area write a chapter. So it's like Professor Tom O'Toole writing about loyalty or whatever. Like, so I think this is a broader one. And I think if you own a business, like it's probably this one that you need.
Two books. You need to buy two books. Yeah, because for advertisement. One of the last questions about experience. Like before, we had just people buy stuff. Now we want experience. Even in restaurants, they start to do like I saw like this when you come in this presentation, people have like smell, taste, and plus some show around you. Is this short term as well, or is this will be a stay for a while?
I think it's going to stay for a long time, because I think that what we're running into is that, like, again, the barriers to entry across so many markets have fallen, so that there's so many offerings that are exactly the same, right? And so if you want to go to your restaurant over that restaurant, or go to your airline over that airline, you know, all this stuff, like, why? The offering is exactly the same. And if it's priced the same, like, why would I pick one over the other? And so your choice is like, I can just make it cheaper and then you'll pick me, but who wants to do that? So I think that adding that layer of experience is a way to differentiate on non-product benefits. And I think that's, I think that can be huge in terms of getting differentiation. And sometimes you can do it at like low cost, just by like knowing your customers and what they want and what's gonna, like, what experience is gonna be meaningful to them. Sometimes it's super simple. I had someone tell me the other day, they went to dinner at a restaurant in Evanston. It was fine, but they all got like thank you notes afterwards. And it was like, well, that didn't cost the restaurant very much, right? And it was like signed by all the staff, like, thank you so much for coming here for your birthday. And they're like, what a great place. And now think about what, like, now when they get like, what's your favorite restaurant? Like, oh, I love that place. Was the food like magically, food's basically the same in a lot of these restaurants, right? The price is basically the same. They sent me a nice note. Like, that's a reason for me to go back there over all these other places because of this really simple experiential thing.
Professor, thank you so much. And can you give like some recommendation for people who maybe wants to join Kellogg, maybe someone wants to start business, or someone wants to be a professor or want to do, I don't know, something, and you just give some recommendation for them.
How about, I'll talk about graduate school. So you don't have to go to graduate school. How about that? For some people, it makes sense. And I think that if you are in your late 20s and you think you're going to be in like a leadership position later in life, that you're going to have to be running a lot of different things, then graduate school makes a ton of sense, right? I think it makes a lot of sense if you're really good at your job and you want to switch careers. I think then graduate school can also make a lot of sense because it's kind of a reboot. You did EMBA. EMBA is amazing because it's older folks and they come to the class with so much experience themselves that it's almost a whole different world. So the executive MBA experience is like if you're already doing well in your career and you just want to kind of, now you know enough to kind of soak in more from classes because you're like, oh, I've seen these before. And one of my favorite things about teaching the executive MBAs is their questions are better because when I'm showing an example, you're like, half the class is like, I've run into that before, right? How would you solve it in this situation? I'm in pharma, how would that apply here, right? And so not only is the questions better and then your ability to soak it in is better because you've seen more in your life, but I think that your peers that you have in these classes, they've all been fairly successful to this point and you're learning a ton from your peers. And so I think there is not one best way. There's not one best school. It's all about finding your fit. And there's all sorts of different programs when you find your fit that are the best to help you kind of get to the next level.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.